There we
Yeah.
go. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tyler Susko. To give you a little bit of background of where all this started for me. About 15 years ago, I started my PhD at MIT, and I was focusing on rehabilitation robotics at the time. So this was understanding how robots could interface with humans to recover post-neuro injury, such as stroke, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, things of that nature. My research brought me into developing a split belt robotic treadmill that had two separate treadmills butted up next to one another. Each one of those treadmills could drop away to allow easier swing while walking. And one of the things I found when we tested it in our pilot test there was that it was just really so much easier for people to walk when they didn't have to worry about scuffing their foot when they were coming for each step. So the robot would look at people's legs, and as soon as they were about to take a step, it would drop the floor away on that one side of the body. And the foot would then swing forward like a pendulum and get through, and then the track would come up and meet the foot again and bring the foot back as they went for another step. When we were doing this study, we found some rehabilitative effects of the device, but one of the things that was most striking was people said to me, "Hey, it's really easy not having to worry about clipping the floor when I'm walking. It's something I'm always thinking about." I wish that you could make that same feeling for me when I leave the lab. So we said, well, maybe we'll do that. One of the people that was in the study just happened to be moving to Santa Barbara, and I was moving to Santa Barbara. I'm a professor at UC Santa Barbara in mechanical engineering. And I said, well, why don't we work on it together? She had cerebral palsy, and she said, great, yeah, let's do it. We ran this for the first year here, and we made a robotic shoe because I came from robotics. And the shoe itself would collapse, the front end would collapse when people would try to take a step, very similar to what we were doing with the treadmill, except we were kind of inverting it and putting it into a shoe. But there were a lot of problems with putting electronics and motors into shoes, namely they're heavy. The software could get buggy, things like that. So it wasn't the best way of going. So then we just continuously plugged away and tried to figure out a way to get that same feeling that people were feeling on the treadmill into some sort of a device that they could wear over ground out every day. So the next year we tried to create something which I called a passive device to do this. So we had a kind of a plunger in a shoe that would plunge in and out and try to get rid of that front tip of the shoe as people were moving. And that was problematic going down steps. So skip forward about 30 different design iterations. And we came up with something that was similar to what you're seeing in the Cadence original shoes now, which was to take a low friction surface on the bottom of the shoe. But when people stood on it, they got their friction back. And in that way, it kind of replicated what we were doing at MIT, where we would take away the floor completely during swing, and then we would give it back when they would put their foot on the ground. So that's how all of this came to be. So it was about 10 years of work to get to a very simple shoe that you're seeing right now. And we're happy that it's simple because we can get it to so many more people. So that's the general history of how this all came to be. As a company, we just started shipping in mid-March. So we're very early, but we're really excited by what we've seen so far.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. On this note, I know a few folks are probably waiting for your shoes. The reason is, as Tyler mentioned, we just launched in September last year and started shipping in March for the first time. And on a very positive note for all of us, we had such a high demand that things sold out even before we got it to the United States. And if we immediately added more sizes, got smaller sizes and larger sizes for both women and men, just to make sure that we can accommodate as many people as possible. So we're catching up on the supply side. Please bear with us as we try to get everyone their pairs of shoes. We are restocking in July with sizes 7 through 10 for women and sizes 9 through 12 for men. And then we are adding the new sizes are coming out in September. We also have very exciting new colors coming out later this year, so stay tuned on that. But I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. So this is all owed to the fact that these shoes are really helping a lot of people and they were in such high demand. So that's why we are a little backlogged on that. And We're working really hard to make sure we get everyone their shoes. On that particular note, can you share who the shoes are made for and who would benefit most from them?
Yeah, sure. So the shoes are really made to offer this function, and I'm going to bring up a surface here, where if you're having trouble advancing the foot during what we call swing, so actually maybe I'll back up. When we think about walking, we think of it in two different phases. There's a phase of walking when your foot is in contact with the ground, and then there's a phase of walking when your foot is not in contact and it's advancing forward. We call that the swing phase of gait. And then the stance phase is when you come into contact and your foot is in contact with the ground. So this shoe is really for people that have a difficulty during the swing phase of gait. So when we're coming forward, this could be to a whole host of different reasons. But anybody that's having trouble and might be starting to invent solutions to get your foot forward, such as circumduction, where you pull your foot out to take another step, or hip hiking, where you kind of jump, or a gait that's common that we see with a lot of Parkinson's patients is the sliding gait, where they're actually shuffling the foot. That shuffle gait, this just becomes a whole lot easier because you are on a low friction surface. The way that the shoe is built is such that it can slide for you unless you put your weight on it. So once you put your weight on it, there's a soft foam right here. This is a soft polyurethane foam that's able to squish really easily. I have this part right here. So when you put your weight on it, this squishes. So because it squishes, the low friction slides, they'll start to push up into the shoe, and then you get the traction for the high traction rubber that's on the bottom. That's this part here. So to answer your question, the shoes are for anybody that has trouble advancing the foot during the swing phase of gait, that time where you're advancing the foot forward.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We get this asked quite a bit, not only for this Q&A, but also customers that just got their shoes. What is it like when you first put the shoe on? There is this new sensation. Can you describe what that's like, what it will feel like for someone that just gets their shoes, and how to get started? What's the recipe for success, as it were?
Yeah, so this is a completely new experience for some people. I'd say we did a test with people before we launched this commercially, where we followed people for up to 6 months walking in these shoes, and we check in with them periodically about how they're feeling, and how are they doing in the shoes. And I found about 70% of the people, when they wear this shoe, they just kind of get it, and within a couple days they feel comfortable. Even the same day they feel comfortable with them. And then about 30% need about a week to get comfortable. And that's because it is a different walking experience. Anytime that you've been on a low friction surface before, say you went on an ice rink in your normal shoes, everybody can kind of visualize that. It would be pretty nerve-wracking. You'd be sliding all around and you would never regain that traction, and you'd slip and you'd fall. And that could make people have, adverse reactions to jumping in this low friction or variable friction shoe. But for this variable friction shoe, once you put weight on it, you get your traction back. So it's a completely different experience in that way. So it's low friction if you accidentally scuff the floor and you're going forward, but as soon as you put your weight on it, you get your traction back. So in order to be successful, some tips for success are to get the shoe on and start very slowly. So when you go from a seated position to standing, you want to make sure that your feet are on top of the surface and you get that traction back before you stand up. Once you stand up, we like to instruct people to do a motion like this. We call it testing the waters, kind of like dipping your toe in a pool and testing to see how it feels on different surfaces. So you're going to notice that it feels slippery, but then we want you to weight it. So you put your weight on it, and then you feel the stick, and you feel that transition. That starts to build confidence with the shoe. And then as you're starting to walk, what you want to do is, what we're telling people is to force scuff for a few back and forth walking sessions, where we're actually trying to use the slide just so that it puts in your mind like, hey, this is what it can do. So we find that after you do that, you start to really understand what's happening underneath your body, and your body picks it up pretty quickly. We ran a pilot study at UCSB before we even went towards commercialization, and we had a similar shoe, and we found that people can adapt to this different walking surface fairly quickly, within a couple of minutes, most of the times, once you fully trust it. And the body then starts to alter the biomechanics and how you're actually walking. So again, to summarize and answer your question, Johannes, it was, start slowly on new surfaces, take it slow, make sure that the shoe is weighted before you get up. And then as you're starting to take those first few steps, try to engage the sliding mechanism underneath the foot and let it slide every time you go. And then as you do that, you'll get a little bit more comfortable and then you won't have to think about it.
Awesome. Two questions that are related to this. So Lolita asks, are there any issues driving with these shoes? And then in chat, Carolina asks, are shoes suitable when using gym equipment? Can you speak to that?
That's a really great question. Yeah, so I've driven in the shoes to test them to make sure it was okay, and I never had any problems with that. That being said, this is a low friction surface here. So if you have a pedal that's made out of metal or something like that, it can slide. For when I drive, I try to place the pedal so that I get the high friction stuff on that pedal so it sticks like a normal shoe would. That being said, this is something that's different that's underneath your foot. I would use extra caution when driving because it is a different scenario. If you just have the tip or the side of a puck on there, it could slip off of the pedal. So be careful when you're driving with them. I've done it. But I would recommend if you have another pair of shoes to drive in, I'd recommend driving with those and then putting these on when you're ready to take your walk.
Awesome. And then the gym equipment.
Yes, the gym equipment. So if you're on, say, like an elliptical machine, you have kind of a platform. That platform is meant to stay in contact with your shoe the whole time. So as long as you load it, you're going to be able to stick on it. But as you're unloading it and you take weight off of your shoe, there's a chance that could kind of float on the elliptical type of a platform or a bike, a bicycle type of platform. So again, I think for the time being, I would recommend walking to the gym with your shoes and having a second pair that you're going to go on an elliptical machine with.
Awesome. Related to this, hold on, just going through the comments here. Emily just asked in chat, how is this when walking on already slippery surfaces like ice, rain and that kind of stuff? Yeah. And April asked a similar kind of question related, how is this on grass? So can you describe the general nature of on which surfaces conditions the shoe will work well and which surfaces and condition to avoid?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So on an icy surface, you're going to want to be extra cautious, just like you would be in any other type of shoe. Your traction is going to be altered. Same with wet surfaces. It's going to be the similar situation that you're going to have with other shoes. It's still going to have that low friction sliding nature to it before you put weight on it. The real difference here will be when you do weight it, because your traction is now going to be coming in contact with a wet or slippery surface. So you won't get the same amount of traction back as you would on that dry surface. So I'd say in wet or icy conditions, I would use extra caution beyond what you're used to, just like you would with any other pair of shoes. And then in terms of grass, the variable low friction type surface will function more or less like any other shoe would in grass. And that's because underneath this shoe, if we look at it, I'll try to get a good view of the front if I can set it up right. So you can see that this is like a catamaran. There's a gap in between the traction in the middle of the shoe and the ground itself. So if there was grass in that gap, it is probably going to get up into the high friction stuff. So if it gets up into the high friction stuff, it's just going to grab like any other normal shoe would at that point. So for grass, it's not going to give you the variable friction benefit that you'd have over like a hard surface, or low pile carpet will still work with that variable friction type behavior. I would say the one surface that always turns off the low friction mode is rubber. So if you have a rubber mat, it will completely turn off low friction. The low friction material will stick to a rubber mat. So that also goes with rubberized surfaces like tracks. If you go to walk on an outdoor track that's rubberized, that rubber is going to stick to the shoe. And it's the only problem with that is it's no longer going to function like a variable friction, low friction slide. It's going to function like any other shoe would. So it just takes away the benefit that you would get over a surface like any type of a sidewalk or asphalt or hardwood floors or tile. All of those things work very well with these shoes because they slip, they slide really nicely. When you put weight on it, they're going to grip. Yeah, I hope that answered that question.
It did. Barbara asks, how do they perform on uneven surfaces such as rocky trails and cobblestones?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a nice benefit of the shoe as well. So whenever you have, let's put down something on my surface. So we'll have this kind of, this is a pretty big, like 1/2 inch little bearing puck thing I've got here. So when the shoe comes in contact with that, it's going to slide up it like a ski would. So there's a little bit of a ramp in the front of the shoe, and it's built that way such that when you come in contact with those little uneven nubs that are outside, it can hit those and then it can get over them. So it's built for that purpose. And that's why we have this angle, which is called a rocker on the front of the shoe, is so that you can get over certain obstacles that if you come in contact with them.
Awesome. Let's switch to AFO questions for a second here. So we got multiple questions. I just saw Sherry post one, and then we got a question from Catherine. Do I need to wear my AFO with these shoes?
Yeah, so this is a really common question I think we get a lot. And the answer is no. So we had developed this shoe, and in fact, we have a clinical trial that's just getting started at the Ability Lab, which is part of Northwestern University in Chicago. And we're studying these shoes directly against AFO use post-stroke. The shoes were developed such that you could take advantage of the floor during that swing phase and sliding nature. So if you're a person that has trouble with ankle control, these shoes allow you to kind of slide forward. Now, the AFO is going to give you a whole lot of support. And by nature, the AFO blocks all your motion at the ankle. So it gives you kind of a rigid 90 degrees. There's some that have hinges in them, but their nature is to give you a lot of stability in this direction. And they just lock out your ankle. So this shoe was made to be used without them. However, if you can fit your AFO in either a regular width or a wide width, a standard wide width shoe, then these might be a pretty good option to go with your AFO at this point.
Awesome.
Does that answer the question, Johannes?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
So other questions, how about ankle support and arch support? Multiple people have asked this. Can you speak to these particular properties of the shoe, what they do, what they don't do, supination and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So for ankle support, these shoes will just work as well as any other athletic shoe. So they're not built for extra arch support. They're not built for any type of extra ankle support. However, the devices that you would use with a typical athletic running shoe can be used with these shoes as well. So for example, some people for supination problems where the ankle is rolling, people have found good success. And in our clinical trial right now at the Ability Lab, if we're having somebody that has excessive supination, so they're really turning their ankle inward, we're using an air cast with those people. So an air cast is something that you can get currently on Amazon. They're $50 or less, and they provide support just in this direction. The beauty of using an air cast is it still allows you to have control in the plantar flexion, dorsiflexion degree, or up and down, but they do help you with this lateral support. And so for arch support, you can remove the insoles. I've already done it here. So when you pop the insole out, you can put in some sort of an orthotic insole inside of it. We have standard width insoles as is. So this is made to be used for interchangeable insoles. So if you're a person that needs extra arch support, I would recommend using your current solution that you use in another pair of athletic shoes.
Awesome. Real quick, cleaning of the shoes. We do recommend you spot clean them. Use a Mr. Clean sort of sponge to clean the shoes. We've put them in a washing machine. They hold up okay. We don't recommend that just for longevity of the shoe, but this has been asked. Try to use a brush to clean off the mud and that kind of stuff that's firm on it, and then use a sponge to spot clean, and don't put them in a washer unless you really want to do that. They were not going to break, but we don't recommend it as a brand, just so you know. Can you speak to the firmness of the shoe in terms of the shoe sole, in terms of durability? So how long is the shoe going to last compared to other sneakers? Do you have any data on that?
Yeah, so we've done testing with these shoes. We've had people wear them in our beta tests for up to 6 months with them and give them back afterwards, and they were fine. We've had people put 150,000 steps in them, send them back. The front puck did grind down to about half of its original thickness after that 150,000 steps, but every person's going to be different. So if you're somebody that heavily pushes that foot into the ground on pavement every single step, you're going to grind down any surface of any shoe fairly quickly. If you're a person that can scuff and something like 10% of your body weight as you're going forward, I suspect they're going to last about 150,000 steps. We did run them over a year-long test at a shoe testing facility, and they passed the test and they were able to last that long. But yeah, does that answer the question, Johannes?
It does. Yeah, of
Okay.
course. Someone in chat asked, do they help with fatigue?
With fatigue, this is a really good question. So walking fatigue. I have no scientific data to suggest that they do. However, I have observations. So if you have a gait that heavily relies on circumduction. So for circumduction, that would be the gait that you pull your hip out really wide to get that foot forward because you're worried about scuffing the floor and the shoe sticking. This motion is just way more energetically efficient than doing something like this. And it's also using muscles that are bigger in this way. And this way we can use the knee to bend a little bit if it's possible. And we use the heel, the hip to swing our foot directly forward. If we're doing this, we're using tiny little hip muscles that are on the outside of our hip to lift that leg way out to the side and then bring it forward. So in that way, we're using little muscles and we're really spending a lot of energy trying to get our foot forward. So in that way, yes, I think this would help with fatigue because we wouldn't be having to develop these strategies to really clear that floor every step. The other part of that, when we talk about fatigue, that I always think about is mental fatigue as well. A lot of people that I've worked with these shoes in the past have talked about how mentally straining it is to take a step, because every step they have to also think, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip. And with these shoes, my hope is that people become more rhythmic in the way that they walk. When I say rhythmic, I mean that we create kind of a rhythm underneath our body as we walk. There's a lot of scientific literature out there that shows that rhythmic motions are created differently than discrete motions. Discrete is a motion that has a definitive start and stop point. And this can date back to a lot of different types of animals, and we can go on a big tangent there. But if you're walking in a rhythmic manner, we can kind of release our brain a little bit, our mind, to just do it and not have to think every step independently. So from a fatigue standpoint, we don't have to think as much about the steps, so we can reduce our mental load as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Linda asks, I wear AFOs on both feet. In addition to drop foot, I have difficulty lifting my legs due to weak hip flexors.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if your shoe can help me walk better. Also, I'm nervous about the rocker bottom. My balance is off, so I don't know if this shoe will work for me. Can you speak to that?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So AFOs on both sides, again, we're going to have to make sure that the AFOs fit in a shoe that has regular width or a standard wide width. If you're currently using something like a 4E width or a 6E width, currently we don't have anything to offer you that will fit on those shoes. I have used our shoes with AFO myself just to test them out. And I have put these shoes on people that do wear AFOs. And I actually find that they're really easy to walk in with the AFOs. Because you have that fixed ankle a lot of times with the AFOs, as we're coming forward, and if you have weakness in your hips, it's really hard to get to clear that floor. Here you can just slide. And when you just slide, it just makes it a whole lot easier. So yeah, I would recommend somebody like that to try the shoes as long as they can fit them. Our development team is currently developing a 6E width shoe that's specifically made for AFOs in the future. But we're making sure that we always make sure that something is right before we get it out there. So it's probably about a year out.
Wonderful. That ties into Hannah's question, which she just posted. Will you consider a single size shoe program? I wear an AFO on my right leg, so I need larger and wider size shoe than my left. This would negate buying two pairs. Billy Shoes has this inclusive program, and it's tremendous.
Yes, yes, and that's something that we're aiming towards in the future. But once we get this AFO specific shoe, so this shoe will be developed from the ground up to be completely developed for AFOs. And in that way, we understand that a lot of people that wear AFOs wear them on a single side. So these shoes specifically will be sold as left or right. They will not come in a pair. So when that time comes, there will be a solution where you could buy a pair at your normal foot size with the Cadence original shoes. And then you can also buy that bigger side that's going to go with the AFO. The long-term goal with this shoe is for people to practice walking without their AFOs. But we recognize and realize that when you have an AFO, you just might be more comfortable in it. So for everyday walking, you might want to have that AFO with a Cadence shoe on the AFO side. But when you're training you're training your ankle and you're training your walking, we would do so with just a standard pair.
Fantastic. I know I'm missing a few questions, but I'll try to catch up with everything that's going on in chat. And thank you everyone for being so interactive and asking these fantastic questions. Here's one. I do catch my toe during my normal stride. I don't have clinical foot drop, but my problem is similar to foot drop. I've worn the shoes for 4 to 6 hours, 4 hours, 6 times over the past 2 weeks. I weigh 125 pounds. The grip on weight bearing is still disconcertingly slippery. The toe spring is very grippy and does catch. I haven't fallen, but it feels unstable. What advice would you give?
Okay. Yeah. So somebody that's walking with them that has a low weight. So you have to be able to put weight on the front of the shoe to compress the pucks. So if you're 125 pounds or below, I would recommend making sure that you can actually compress it the way that you walk. So this would be before you get walking, it would be trying the shoe over a certain surface, putting your body weight on them and ensuring that you can feel when it transitions to the high friction. If you can't put enough weight on the shoe to compress it, then that would be a time where you'd say this shoe is not for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Dave asks, I wear a 12.5 D in Hoka. What size would I wear with this shoe?
Yeah, so our shoes are fitted very similar to that. So a D width is what we use for our regular width. So you would use, to answer the question directly, that would be a 12.5 regular. Our wide width is built off an E-last. So all these last names, it's just how wide. A last physically is a wooden molded foot that you put inside and you sew around it to sew the upper part of the shoe. So the wider this last is, it's just a wider wooden foot that goes that gives you extra volume the more you're going to get in there. So if you're wearing a D lasted shoe, that's our regular. If you're wearing a E-lasted shoe, that's our wide.
Awesome. I saw a question earlier. How do the sizes between women and men and the other way around compare? So let's just say a size 9 in women, how does that transfer over to men and the other way around? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. So we do have sizing information on our website. That's an easy way to measure your foot and determine what size you are. But speaking generally, our regular women's are built on what's called a C last. And again, the lasts are kind of how wide that wooden foot is as they're sewing around it. So women standard regular width is a C last, and then men's regular is a D, and men's wide is an E. Women's wide is a D, which is the same width as our men's regular. So in terms of length measurements, it's if you have, say, a 10 men size, that's equivalent to about 11 women size and length, 11 between 11 and 11 and a half. Um, the one thing to note is that we did invest in tooling that's women specific. So our women's shoes are made more anatomically correct to a female's foot that have a little bit different dimensions than men's. So while they're still built on the same width of a last that's being sewn around them, the soles of the shoe are built specific for women versus for men. You could switch and cross over. I don't think there'd be a huge difference, but we just did it to make sure that we were having maximum comfort.
Awesome. Couple questions on, is the shoe waterproof? Do you have any winter style boots in your plan? How about distribution plans?
Yeah, so the shoes are going to perform like any other athletic shoe, or as it was mentioned, like a Hoka shoe, very similar to that. Our material that we made, this is a knitted fabric. That knitted fabric is not going to be waterproof. So if it was raining outside, it would, just like any other type of knit, you would get wet. The soles wouldn't wick up any moisture. So as long as it's not raining on top, you're not going to feel any wetness on your feet. But certainly it's not waterproof. Currently, we do not have plans to go waterproof with the shoes. But who knows where the future will take us.
Lots of good stuff coming though. So I think that, now we want to honor all your orders and get you shoes in your hands. And once we're fully caught up, there will be different styles. Gotten lots of requests for colors. So if you would like us to bring more colors to the game and offer those, let us know. You can either email us. Our customer support team is there to help, and we'll relate these to our product development team, and then we can make sure we add those different styles and new colors. Kathy asks, I've had a stroke and right side weakness. I was able to walk on carpet and tile floors. I had a very difficult time on hardwood floors. My foot slips on the right before I can get it to load up and get the friction down. Do you have any recommendations for Kathy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recommend, like we talked about earlier, I recommend starting slow with these shoes, especially if you've had a stroke or you're trying to recover from something. You want to ensure that you can load that foot and get the friction back underneath yourself. So this is done through multiple steps, which we do have this on our website, but the first step is making sure that you can actually load that foot. So putting weight down on it and making sure that you can feel the grip underneath. After that, again, it's a force drag. So we also, I guess I didn't mention this either. When we're starting with people, especially that are in the clinical setting right now, we're telling them to take small steps to start. So we want to make sure that you're walking in a proper fashion with your foot coming forward as you step, rather than developing some sort of a compensatory strategy to get your foot forward. So it would be start by taking small steps, and especially if you have tough time with ankle control. If you have a tough time with ankle control and you take very large steps, what happens is you are going to roll all the way over on the tip of the shoe with that large step with limited ankle control. And then now you're on the rubber part, so it's not going to slide anymore. So what you want to do as you're getting started is to forcibly scuff the foot, go absolutely straight with your walking, and take small steps as you go. And then you're going to start to get used to the shoe. And then once you start getting used to it, I would recommend starting with equalizing step lengths. So keep going on small steps, equalize your step length. Once you've got step length equalized, I would start focusing on rhythmicity, which is taking the same amount of time between your right steps as your left steps. And I like to think of it as making a beat as you're walking. Once you're there, and you start to feel like your walking is getting better, it would be, now we can start to increase the length of the steps. But not until we get to the point where we're walking rhythmically, we're walking symmetrically, and we're taking those short steps to get started.
Awesome. Stephanie asks, where are the shoes manufactured? I'm gonna speak to that. So like most athletic footwear, our shoes are manufactured in China, and it doesn't really matter as to where you manufacture. It doesn't matter who does your manufacturing. And so in order for us to make sure that we are working with people that, you know, have best quality practices in place, but also treat their workers right, I personally went to our factory, audited them over the course of an entire week, made sure that everything's in good order, that, you know, the shoes are top-notch quality, but also the people that work on it are treated very fairly. So long answer to that is our shoes are made in China with a very trusted source of ours. Emily asks, in review of your return policy, how are we supposed to navigate trying them out in real life situations, walking outside, if we will be unable to return them if they do not work out? I will answer the first part of that question, which is, please try the shoes on for size and fit without, you know, if you get a shoe and you're unsure about the fit, try that on the carpet. Try to make sure that you're not getting them dirty, right? So that would help us tremendously. But we've been very generous in our return policy in terms of, you know, if somebody's like, I'm not sure if this is going to work for me, we encourage you to try them out, right? So because we want as many people to have success with the shoes as possible. So we've been very generous in terms of still accepting returns if it didn't work out for someone. So we do encourage you guys to try the shoes, make sure they work for you. Our customer support team is there to help. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at any time. Ken asks, over time, could I remove my walker?
Over time, can you get away with not using a walker anymore?
Yes.
It depends. It depends why you have the walker. But I'm in the belief that, you know, we can train to get better at anything that we do. And I explained this in one of the videos that's on our website. My son plays basketball, and if he wants to get better at shooting a basketball, he goes outside and he shoots a basketball. And the more that you do it, the better that you're going to get at it. If you're walking with a walker and your goal is to not walk with a walker anymore, it would be walk as much as you possibly can with these shoes, strengthen your muscles, strengthen your system, think about the way that you're walking, like we were talking about, taking straight steps. One of the things that I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a PhD. I'm a scientist, I'm an engineer. But I've seen a lot of people with walkers that hunch over and really use that walker to stabilize themselves as they go. I think the transition is to start to make yourself go more erect. And all the PTs I know that talk about walkers will tell me, make sure that you're walking upright as you're in the walker, and try to rely on it less and less as you go. If you can rely on it less and less and start to rely more on your legs, you have a better chance of progressing to a different goal. Long answer short, I think you can get better at a lot of things with practice. Practice is both going to train your mind, it's going to train your motion control system, and it's going to train your body to be stronger.
Awesome. I forgot to answer the question on distribution. So we are currently in the process of rolling out shipments to Canada. You'll see that come live in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Of course, there's still the same wait time that applies to everyone else, but we'll be able to take your order and fulfill your order in the next couple of weeks going to Canada. From there, we'll expand over to Europe and Japan. Give that another 6 months or so until we're ready to do that. Another question was, are these shoes considered a medical type device for possible tax deductions or insurance purposes? So We will announce this later this week, but we are now able to accept payments with FSA and HSA accounts. So in coming up this week, you'll be able to use your FSA, HSA debit card and make a purchase that way. They are currently not considered a medical device. We are looking into other avenues to make our products more accessible. And part of that is, having this be reimbursed by your medical insurance, but that's a long process because you have to go through certain certifications and all that kind of stuff. Like we mentioned earlier in our call, we are just starting out. So bear with us while we work through that process, but later this week or this coming week, you'll be able to pay with FSA and HSA accounts. Is there a minimum weight requirement to use the shoes?
Yeah, so currently we haven't published a minimum weight requirement. However, we would recommend if you are lighter, it was thrown out earlier in the call of 125 pounds. If you're 125 pounds or under, we'd recommend you try them and put weight on the front. Make sure that you can, between your weight and your ability to press down on your forefoot, that you're able to engage the high friction nature before you take these all over the place. Make sure that you get your friction back. You need to be able to compress it in order to get that traction back under your foot. So I would say 125 pounds or below, make sure that you can actually actuate it. And once you're sure that you can, then go to the next step and start your small step walking and go through the rest of the process.
Awesome. And I want to also thank you guys for putting in thank you notes in the chat. We're trying to address all the questions, but just know we are reading these comments and we're really grateful for all the positive comments you're leaving us here. So if we have to return an item, do we have to pay shipping back? So the answer to that is no. We are shipping to you and the return shipping is free of charge. Irene asks, I wear a neural sleeve. Can the shoe be worn while wearing the neural sleeve?
So I've seen the neural sleeve. I haven't seen it in person though. So I'm not sure if there's any device that goes in the foot. I would imagine that it doesn't go into the shoe. And so as long as you can fit a normal shoe with your neural sleeve, then you should be able to fit with this shoe as well.
Awesome. Thank you for the sizing guide. In normal shoes, I would wear a 7 women's, which seem to allow my AFOs to fit. In a review of your sizing guide, it appears I would be in 6. In an effort to fit my AFOs, might it be appropriate to do a 6 wide to accommodate my AFOs?
So I would say go with the same size that you're currently using. Our shoes are made to size. The sizing guide is a standard sizing guide that's based on athletic shoes and foot sizes that are recommended for those sizes. If you know your size in a athletic shoe is a 7 or a 7 wide, I would go with that. If that wouldn't work, then you could size down, but I would go with whatever you're currently comfortable with. We did a size study on our shoes and we were dead center in the middle of all the other brands. So it looked like we were pretty straightforward.
Awesome. Will you be adding a fully laced sneaker? I have MS along with gait issues. My ankles are weak and tend to roll out or roll in. I find the Velcro doesn't have enough ankle stability. It makes the shoe feel wider.
Yeah, so at this point, we're not planning on fully lacing a shoe. The reason is the laces from all of our testers that we've talked to, the laces are a big challenge for people. A lot of times getting down there, having then the dexterity to lace up and tune it. I do understand the desire to really cinch down on the forefoot here. But we found through our tests that our entry mechanism of having the elastic laces on the front edge, plus this is a non-inelastic material. You can't stretch this. You can cinch it pretty tight up. So we haven't had that many problems other than what we're hearing here. But there is no plans right now to do a fully laced, just because for the most part, the people that we're working with find it more challenging.
Awesome. It's 10:45. We're gonna round this one up. This is our first Q&A session, and I want to thank you all for joining. Like I mentioned, going in, there will be a recording. You can rewatch this. We're going to have another Q&A session coming up in about a month or so. We'll bring in a surprise guest. We'll announce who it is beforehand. Next time, we'll focus on exercises you can do with the shoes once you get them. Yeah, Tyler, any parting words that you want to share with the community?
This has been just a lot of fun for me, getting to see something that we worked hard on for more than a decade kind of make its way out there. So it's been really great. We really appreciate any comments that you have for us. Our customer service team gets all excited anytime they see something that's like, oh, we found one that this is really working for somebody. This is great. So we really appreciate all the kind words that we've been getting. If you have other ideas, this is one of the things that Johannes had set up when people purchase. If you have any other ideas or things that you want to see, let us know. We're trying to be really responsive to what people are asking for. So we already have a whole bunch of stuff in the pipeline that you'll be seeing that people have been asking for, but keep those coming too, because that's what we like to do, develop new things. So if you have ideas that something that doesn't exist that you'd like to exist, let us know. That's primarily who we are. We're engineers, so we like to build stuff.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining our first Q&A. We'll be doing more of these and be able to answer any questions that you have. I wish you all the happiest of Sundays. Enjoy the rest of your day. Please bear with us as we fulfill your orders. And thanks again.